Some of you may know me from my court case against girl guiding, but I'm going to be talking today about my actual research. So I started out doing research on children's language and cognitive development, and I got really interested in how children understand sex stereotypes and oh, go away. It's because yeah, it's just gone off. There we go. I got really interested in how children come to understand what is a boy, what is a girl, and how they come to understand stereotyped ideas of what boys and girls can and can't do. So I'm going to be talking to you about what we know in the research and some of the research that I've been doing. I'm sorry that I'm an academic. Academics use slides. Academics talk about boring stuff and cannot talk without the prop of a slide. What is it doing? Okay, so in early cognitive development, anybody who's ever met a child will know that children have immature beliefs and cognitions, but they generally grow out of them. So the stage that I'm talking about here, the main age by which most children have grown out of them is around 8 or so. And this is possibly due to them being able to assess evidence. A lot of people will know an older child who still believes in Santa Claus. This is because parents and teachers present very good evidence for the existence of Santa Claus, much better than the evidence for other magical beliefs. So, children of this age, so from the age of about 3, when we're first able to ask them, up to the age of about 7 or 8 in some cases, have a difficulty with understanding that when something changes its appearance, it does not also change its reality. So, De Vries in 1969, and I know I wouldn't get this through my ethics committee today, had a very patient cat called Maynard, and they put 2 masks on Maynard, a rabbit mask and a dog mask. And the children in his study in this age group genuinely thought that this cat had turned into a rabbit or a dog. Now, this is robust and replicable. I've been doing this with some kids in my area, and we have a bunny which turns into a ghost by having a ghost costume put on it. And my student tested something like 50-something kids, and all but one said, it now looks like a ghost, and it now really is a ghost, apart from one annoying girl who said, it's a rabbit with a ghost costume on. You've put a ghost costume on it. So we do believe that children genuinely think that this is a change, not that they are acting or pretending for us. And so in this video, which is one of my favourites at the moment, this little boy seems to think that his mum shares his belief. So he takes it off to reassure her that he is not genuinely a crocodile. So do children really think this way, or are they a bit more mature than the experiments suggest? So even if we make the questioning easier, even if we use easier materials or easier setups, there are limits to children's ability to understand what is really real. And in other ways, they have similar similar difficulties with believing the way things really are. So there's a biscuit task which I cut it out, but I'll have to explain it to you, so that won't save any time. You give a child, if you've got 2 biscuits, your child's got 1, they will say, that's not fair, break their biscuits in half, and they will be perfectly happy because now they've got 2 and you've got 2. It's really easy to do this with a 3-year-old, and they will be perfectly happy. So it's really easy to fool kids. Sorry, I know this sounds mean, but this is actually what I do. So, we're going to have a brief talk about terminology here. So Kohlberg suggested that when children come to understand gender and sex, that they had 3 stages. First of all, and I've again cut something out without telling you what it is, they become aware of themselves as a boy or a girl. Now, all the literature talks about, where it talks about gender, the same paper will also say the immutability of biological gender, or we all know sex can't change. So these are papers from like the 60s, 70s and 80s. And they may be using the word gender, but they're doing it for squeamishness. They're not doing it because they genuinely think that gender is something different to sex. So these are papers where they talk about a child's awareness of themselves as a boy or a girl, but they are talking about what the child knows about themselves in the biological sense. After this, they become aware that they themselves and other people can't change from a boy into a girl, and they themselves, and then finally they become aware that other people can't do this. But the term gender identity is used quite a lot, and I know people have said, oh, well, this was created by some sexologists. It's used quite a lot in the literature, and I don't think it was exclusively him. But the term identity is similar to the idea of identifying yourself. So this is Mamie Phipps-Clark, who's one of my heroes, who had a racist supervisor, and she said, right, well, sod him, I'm going to carry on doing my PhD anyway. And she did the study that you may have heard of, where black children preferred white dolls to black dolls. And she talked about racial identification. So this is the correct labeling of oneself as such and such. It's not an internal sense, it's a label. So children apply these ideas that something changes when the appearance change to sex role stereotypes. So here we have a 4-year-old versus a 10-year-old.
Just before we start the video, that's building.
Is this a boy or a girl? It's a girl. And is this a boy or is this a girl? It's a boy. Well, what would happen if you took this and gave this to this girl? It would be a girl. Why would it be a girl? Because it has a pocketbook?
Is this doll a boy or a girl? Okay. And is this doll a boy or a girl? Okay, so what would happen if we took this and gave it to that doll? The boy would have a person.
Right, so that's what changes between the ages of 3 and about 8 or 9. So my daughter has short hair, and she had it cut after the first lockdown because she had just been ages without it, and she didn't want to wear hair ties. She went back to school in year 2, and everybody kept saying, you're a boy, you're a boy, you're a boy. She's now in year 4, and they finally, her classmates have got over the fact. And but she was asked the other day, she has recently learned to roll her eyes. She was asked the other day by some 6-year-olds, are you a boy or a girl? And she practiced her eye roll and just looked at me as like, Mummy, just tell them. So this is the stage in which this changes. So what can change this? I'm just hoping I'm not out of time here. So children need to know at least some biology. They need to know about external genitalia. This really helps them to understand what's the difference between a boy or a girl. We've been doing this cross-culturally. So these are the cartoons that we used with my student who did this in China. So this finding is very robust. It's been found for years. I've been repeating it in the northwest of England, but my students have been repeating it in China and Pakistan. It's really, really robust, and it's really easy to find children thinking that you change into the other sex by changing your clothes. And the knowledge that children did not have particularly good knowledge of external genitalia in the same age range in these countries as they do in the West. They don't really know much about what makes a boy or a girl physically, and they need to, they can work it out without knowing this, but it really helps. I'm sorry, I have another, I've cut out this out, I've cut too much out. So, like I said, this is really easy to replicate. I will not play you with this again because of fun though it is, you don't need to hear it again. So it's really robust. We've been doing this again, as I said, with 50-something kids in the northwest of England. And my students who are doing this cross-culturally have got 2 groups in China and Pakistan. But we find that some things do affect this. So we've done a pilot study with with preteens and teenagers who have autism, and most of them also have a learning disability. And we know that teenagers with autism can't do the appearance reality task. That's not the stereotyping ones, but the ones where it's just a general object. And we found that they also couldn't do the task where you had to say whether a boy had changed into a girl. We need to collect the control data on that before we publish it, but we found that kids with autism can't do that. We find also that siblings and kids who identify as transgender also are very poor at the stability. They think that people or they can change from a boy to a girl. Now, this is touted as evidence that they know what's going on with their gender identity by gender identity theorists. But like I say, there is nowhere that the children are not able to conceptualize that an internal feeling of being a boy or girl is any different to the external appearance. And all of the data from all of these robust findings, it's basically done from the 60s right through to the 80s, and then nobody bothered to do it anymore because it's so easy to replicate. Nobody ever thought that this was related to a child's internal feeling of who they are. They only thought this was related to whether you could change biological sex or not. And all the papers say, it's so obvious that you can't change biological sex, but we just thought we'd see if kids thought this. And they do. Anyway, that's the end.